20 nannies had already quit because of one baby, but none of them knew what the baby really needed. Andrew was one of the richest men in the city. At only 38, he owned a billion-dollar company, several luxury properties, private cars, and everything money could possibly buy. But there was one thing money couldn't fix. His 8-month-old son, Isaiah. Isaiah cried constantly. He cried in the morning. He cried in the afternoon. And sometimes he cried for hours at night. 20 different nannies had come into Andrew's mansion. 20 different nannies had tried to care for Isaiah. And 20 had eventually walked away. Some said the baby was impossible. Some said he was too difficult. Others simply couldn't handle the endless crying. Then Tiana arrived. Tiana was young, confident, patient, and unlike the other nannies, she didn't give up easily. On her first day, she held Isaiah gently and whispered, "It's okay, little one. I'm here." For the first few minutes, Isaiah cried. Then he slowly became quiet. Tiana smiled. She thought perhaps she had finally figured him out. But there was one thing she couldn't understand. Why did the baby cry so much whenever his father was around? Andrew barely spent any time with his son. Every morning, he woke up before everyone else, dressed in an expensive suit, grabbed his briefcase, and left for work. Sometimes Isaiah was still sleeping. Sometimes he was awake and crying. But Andrew always had somewhere to be. A business meeting, a conference call, a flight, a deal worth millions. There was always something more important. And when he returned late at night, he was exhausted. He would walk through the mansion, go straight to his office, close the door, and continue working. He didn't check on Isaiah. He didn't ask how his day had been. He didn't know whether his son had eaten. He didn't know what had made him laugh. And he certainly didn't know why the baby cried. Tiana noticed everything. One evening, she stood in the hallway holding Isaiah while Andrew walked past them. Isaiah immediately reached toward his father. His little hand stretched out. His eyes followed Andrew. But Andrew didn't notice. He kept walking. Tiana looked down at the baby. Then she looked at Andrew's disappearing figure. Her heart sank. "That man has everything," she whispered, "except time for his own son." Days passed. Tiana became closer to Isaiah. She learned how he liked his food. She learned how to make him laugh. She learned that he liked being rocked slowly before bedtime. And she learned something else. Isaiah wasn't a difficult baby. He was lonely. One night, after Andrew returned home, Isaiah began crying again. Tiana tried everything. She fed him. She rocked him. She sang softly. Nothing worked. Finally, she carried him downstairs. Andrew was standing in the living room, scrolling through messages on his phone. Tiana stopped in front of him. "Sir?" Andrew barely looked up. "Yes." "Could you hold him for a minute?" Andrew glanced at Isaiah. "I've had a very long day, Tiana." "I know, sir." "Take him upstairs." Tiana stared at him. Isaiah was still crying, and something inside her snapped. She took a deep breath. "Sir, may I ask you something?" Andrew finally looked at her properly. "What?" Tiana swallowed. Then she said the words nobody in the mansion had ever dared to say. "What kind of father doesn't have time for his own son?" Silence. Andrew's expression changed. He slowly lowered his phone. Nobody had ever spoken to him like that. Not his employees. Not his business partners. Not even his family. Tiana continued. "You leave before he wakes up. You come home when he's already asleep. And when he's awake, you're always working." Andrew stared at her. "You're crossing a line." "Maybe I am," Tiana said quietly. "But someone needs to tell you." She looked down at Isaiah. "He doesn't need another nanny, sir." Then she looked directly into Andrew's eyes. "He needs his father." Andrew said nothing. Tiana walked away with Isaiah. For the first time in years, Andrew stood completely still. That night, he went into his office. But he couldn't concentrate. He opened his laptop, read an email, closed it, opened another, closed that one too. Tiana's words kept echoing in his head. He needs his father. Andrew leaned back in his chair. Then he looked at the photograph sitting on his desk. It was a picture of Isaiah. His tiny son was smiling at the camera. Andrew stared at the photograph for a long time. Then he whispered, "When was the last time I actually held you?" He couldn't remember. He couldn't remember the last time he had fed his son. He couldn't remember the last time he had played with him. He couldn't even remember the last time he had watched him fall asleep. Andrew covered his face with his hands. And for the first time, he admitted something painful. I've been a terrible father. The next morning, Andrew's assistant arrived at the mansion with his schedule. Sir, your first meeting is at 8. Then you have the investors meeting at 10 and cancel everything. The assistant froze. Everything? Andrew nodded. Yes. Are you sure? Andrew looked toward the staircase leading to Isaiah's room. For today. He took a deep breath. I want to spend the day with my son. And for the first time since Isaiah was born, Andrew didn't pick up his briefcase. He picked up his son. But what happened next shocked everyone in the mansion. Because the billionaire who had never had time for his baby was about to discover what his son had been waiting for all along. For the first time, Andrew didn't go to work. He stayed home for the one person who had been waiting for him all along. Andrew stood outside Isaiah's bedroom. For a moment, he simply stared at the door. He had entered that room hundreds of times in his own mansion, but somehow it felt unfamiliar. He slowly opened the door. Isaiah was sitting on the bed with Deborah beside him. The moment Isaiah saw his father, his little eyes followed him. Andrew smiled. Good morning, son. Deborah looked surprised. Mr. Andrew? Andrew nodded. I'll take him. Deborah immediately stood. Of course, sir. Andrew carefully picked Isaiah up. The baby stared at him. Then Isaiah reached up and touched his father's face. Andrew froze. That tiny hand resting against his cheek affected him more than any business deal ever had. He whispered, You know me, don't you? Isaiah made a small sound. Andrew smiled. I should know you too. He carried Isaiah downstairs. For the first time, he wasn't rushing. He wasn't checking his phone. He wasn't thinking about meetings. He was simply walking with his son. When they reached the kitchen, Andrew looked around. What does he eat? Deborah smiled. His usual breakfast is prepared already. Andrew shook his head. No, I'll make it. Deborah's eyes widened. You, sir? Andrew laughed softly. Yes, me. He placed Isaiah in his baby carrier and secured him carefully against his back. Then he began preparing breakfast. Isaiah rested his tiny head against his father's shoulder. Andrew looked over his shoulder at him. You comfortable back there? The baby made a little sound. Andrew smiled. I'll take that as a yes. He continued cooking. For the first time, the billionaire's kitchen wasn't filled with chefs preparing expensive meals. It was filled with the sound of Andrew quietly humming while his baby rested on his back. And then Tiana returned. She walked through the kitchen doorway, carrying a small shopping bag. She stopped immediately. Her mouth fell open. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Andrew turned around. Morning, Tiana. She stared at Isaiah, then at Andrew, then back at Isaiah. Sir? Andrew smiled. Yes. What are you doing? Andrew looked at his son. Then he looked at her. Being his father. Tiana smiled. But you're cooking? Yes. With Isaiah on your back? Andrew chuckled. Apparently, I'm learning how to multitask. Tiana laughed. For the first time, she saw something different in Andrew. He wasn't the cold billionaire everyone in the mansion knew. He was just a father trying to make up for lost time. Andrew turned back to the stove. Tiana watched him for a moment. Then she said, Sir, you don't have to do everything yourself. Andrew shook his head. I know. He paused. But I should do some of it. Tiana smiled. Andrew continued cooking. Then he looked at her. You were right. Tiana became quiet. About what? Everything you said yesterday. He looked down. I thought being a good father meant making sure my son had everything. He glanced at the enormous mansion around him. Food, clothes, security, the best doctors, the best toys. Then he looked at Isaiah. But I forgot the one thing he couldn't buy. Tiana smiled gently. Time. Andrew nodded. Time. He turned off the stove. Then he carefully removed Isaiah from his back and held him in his arms. The baby looked up at him. Andrew kissed his forehead. I miss so much. Tiana watched quietly. Andrew continued. I can't get those days back. His voice became emotional. But I can make sure I don't miss any more. That afternoon, Andrew did something nobody expected. He took Isaiah outside. He sat on the grass with him. He played with him. He made funny faces until Isaiah started laughing. And that laugh stopped Andrew completely. He stared at his son. Then he laughed too. That's your laugh. Isaiah giggled again. Andrew smiled. I've been missing that. Tiana stood nearby, watching them. She couldn't help smiling. The same baby who had spent months crying was now laughing in his father's arms. Later that evening, Andrew fed Isaiah himself. He struggled at first. Some food landed on his shirt. Tiana laughed. Andrew looked at the stain. Don't laugh. I wasn't laughing, sir. You definitely were. They both laughed. Even Deborah smiled from across the room. The mansion felt different that night. Warmer, happier. And for the first time, Isaiah wasn't crying because his father was leaving. He was crying because he didn't want his father to stop playing with him. Andrew picked him up. Okay. One more game. Tiana smiled. Sir, it's bedtime. Andrew looked at Isaiah, then sighed dramatically. Fine. He carried his son upstairs. He tucked him in a bed. But before leaving, Andrew sat beside him. He watched Isaiah's eyes slowly close. Then he whispered, I'm here now, son. He kissed his forehead. And I'm not going anywhere. The next morning, something even more surprising happened. Andrew woke up before his alarm. He didn't reach for his phone. He didn't think about his company. The first thing he thought about was Isaiah. He walked into the baby's room. Isaiah was awake. The moment he saw his father, he smiled. Andrew smiled back. Good morning, little man. He picked him up. And from that day forward, things changed. Andrew still ran his billion-dollar company. He still attended important meetings. He still traveled when necessary. But he stopped allowing work to take every moment of his life. He created time for Isaiah. Every morning, he spent time with him. Every evening, he came home earlier. He learned how to feed him. He learned how to change his clothes. He learned how to calm him when he cried. And sometimes, when Isaiah wouldn't sleep, Andrew would simply strap him to his back and walk around the kitchen. The mansion staff couldn't believe the transformation. The 20 nannies who had come before Tiana had all believed Isaiah was impossible. But Tiana understood something they hadn't. Isaiah wasn't asking for more attention because he was spoiled. He was asking for his father. One evening, Tiana stood in the kitchen watching Andrew carry Isaiah on his back while preparing dinner. She smiled. Andrew looked at her. What? She shook her head. Nothing. You're smiling. I'm just happy. Andrew smiled. Then he looked at Isaiah. So am I. He had spent years building an empire. He had made billions. He had bought mansions, cars, and everything money could offer. But none of those things had ever made him feel the way his son's little laugh did. Andrew finally understood something. Being a father wasn't about how much money he could leave behind. It was about the memories he created while his child was growing up. And thanks to one brave maid named Tiana, Andrew had finally realized that his greatest responsibility wasn't sitting in his office. It was sitting in his arms. Moral lesson. Sometimes we become so busy chasing success that we forget the people who are waiting for us at home. Money can provide comfort, but time, love, and presence are things no amount of money can replace. Don't wait until someone has grown up to realize you should have spent more time with them. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs this reminder. Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money. It's your time.